Hey everyone, Ryan Green with Data Cloud. Now, I had the opportunity to sit down with Wendy Turner-Williams. If you want to see part one of the video, just click on the link below. But we're going to jump right into part two. Enjoy. Now, Wendy, I want to stick with this, big picture outlook. Are there specific nuances across geographies that global organization should be taking into consideration?
Yes. I think when it comes to data, there's a lot of things happening. You've got all these privacy laws that are coming out, right? Or you have even specific data handling laws that are specific to certain geographies. Like if you're in China and even if you're a Microsoft, et cetera, data that's generated in the China region cannot leave China, right? So there's geographic boundaries, there's geographic politics that need to be taken into consideration. There's privacy laws that you have to meet in the US that might be for the EU. Like if you think GDPR, any employee that is from the EU can still have GDPR rights, okay? Even though you're a US company, okay? If you're an airline in the US and you've got people who are flying on your airline who are from a certain country, they have rights. So I think that when it comes to kind of following on our last topic around public, we're one world. And the reality is that running your business often means you have to understand data handling across any geography in order to meet that regulatory or compliance or even any type of laws that impact in some type of regulatory fine as well, right? The other thing that I think is interesting on this note is that when it comes to the investment in like the leadership or the big picture thinking, I know that I spent time at Tableau basically setting up CDO circles all around the world, all around the globe, okay? And some of them are more advanced and more mature than others. Like right now in APAC, specifically like in Japan, only 1% to 3% of Japanese companies have a CDO. So we're spending a lot of time educating them on the value. Back to your earlier question about, does it go under a CMO or a CIO, or is it a peer, or is it glue? There's still a lot of unknown that happens across geographies about the value of data and the need to invest in the leadership or the accountability models, not just around the technology. Another example right now is that I think like in Singapore, only 35% of employees feel that they have data skill sets, where in the US, I think it's close to 72% feel like they've got data skill set investments. So again, targeting by geography based on value is an ongoing, never-ending process, and some are more mature than others.
I want to stick with this forward-looking approach, Wendy. What predictions do you have in relation to the future of the data cloud?
I think that the data cloud, you're just going to see, double down, triple down growth that really happens. I think data cloud is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. I think what you're going to see is more focus on, again, multi-substrate integration capabilities across clouds. I think that when it comes to running a business end to end, when you think about like your marketing processes versus your financial processes versus your sales processes versus your product processes, the reality is that most companies, most of your customers are going to be in some hybrid of on-prem plus blended cloud technologies capabilities. And so I think we're going to see more of the glue type of products and skills, cloud capabilities that come out that really enable those people to get the value across the board. I also think that we're going to see a lot more focus on, of course, AI. We know that that's coming, but I think, again, in order for AI to be effective from a cloud perspective and really get AI every day, which means that we have to remove AI from a scientist or a mathematician only type of capability into the hands of anyone, anywhere, which means we need to simplify the processes and really build more experiences that are layman or task oriented in nature. I think we're going to see a lot more of that focus as well, coming to reality. But I think cloud onboarding, cloud integration is just going to continue to skyrocket in the years to come.
Keeping with the data cloud from your perspective as a CDO, what cost benefits have you observed?
Yeah, so we had several. I'll give you an example. Actually, for our team, we moved from on-prem big cloud technology to S3 for a lot of our telemetry processing, big data processing. And if we had lifted and shifted, really, I think the cost and the operations would have been significantly higher. But what we did as a product is we really broke that initiative down into 3 phases, right? How could we actually kind of build, a containment around our existing on-prem environment that really ensured that anything net new was truly needed, so we didn't continue to invest in that environment. We did a dedicated actual data initiative to really look at the data being used, make sure that we had the right retention and policy handling in place, make sure we understood who the stewards were. We actually did a lot of data cleanup as a part of a migration into cloud. And then when we actually got into cloud, we kind of doubled down on making sure we had the right operational metrics in place, right? Where were the big queries, the big users? Were they effective queries? Were they not? What was the cost of that compute, et cetera? Was that something that we needed to curate, right? If it was being used across multiple organizations, did we need to curate that and publish that as a curated set to reduce that expense or that cost for the processing for people to add any type of additional insights or any type of data augmentation? And so, I think that when we did that, we had huge operational impacts. And I don't have any of my facts in front of me, but I'm going to give you some general ideas. We actually were able to support in a new cloud environment, S3, the ability to query telemetry by multiple use cases, including things like C-search, where people were asking for, provide my data, give me my logs, or our search engine within Salesforce, or people that were doing usage analytics internally. We were able to produce custom single log type events that contain most of the fields that everyone needed and reduce the big data spin and compute, and actually publish that and improve performance by like 400, 500%. I know that within our C-sort organization at one point in time, getting logs back to a customer and querying against our old legacy on-prem system, which, by the way, was storing in a big blob of data, not by like a day timestamp or by an event timestamp. So all of that we redesigned as part of moving to cloud. We were able to get what was a 45-day query down to less than 1 day. Okay. And there were many, many other operational improvements. In fact, once we went through and did our retention policies and set in the right retention and clean data as a result of that, our data management efforts were actually able to fund a 1.5 years of actual cloud operational cost as payback from our old spend as just a cleanup and putting in the right governance. So again, I think there's a lot of things that go into it, but you've got to look at the data, not just the tech. You've got to invest in your operational monitors, and you've got to understand what data is actually needed and how you might need to optimize that data for the various use cases in the cloud to make sure you're really achieving the right cost models.
It's a great example of the role the CDO has in making those decisions and having that collective strategy to then use the data to drive impact.
Yeah, I mean, back to like when we created these kind of curated big data event types, we worked across, my team treats data like a product. So we were basically out there with all of our consumers of the data, generating federated shared requirements so we can make sure what needed to be there, what didn't. So we can reduce and actually put data in their hands faster, like the right data. They don't want to spend their time processing the data. They want to support their users, or they want to use that data themselves to actually make a decision, right? It's not about the process to get to that point. It's about the using and using it to actually drive your business. And anytime that we can make that happen faster, and especially if we can make that happen at a macro across many teams instead of one by one, the more effective you are as a data team or as a CDO to keep up with the different priorities or the scale of change and do that glue, right? And that advancement across more the many versus the one, right?
I love hearing the real use cases, Wendy. As it relates to Snowflake specifically, how did they help drive value on a day-to-day basis for you?
There's really two different ways. So that same example that I told you just a minute ago in regards to moving off of a big data on-prem instance that we had into S3, the other thing that we started to do is basically publish the curated governed data sets into Snowflake. So think we were using the big data instances in a cloud for big data, heavy compute processing, and then really kind of focusing on Snowflake in regards to here's the governed curated outputs that are available for you to tap into that are high quality, that are always available, etc. So it improved our actual quality comfort, our quality kind of index related to the decisioning because we put more of a curation layer there. The other thing that we did is that because we then published and layered Snowflake on top of the big data set, we also reduced the operational cost by, again, combining the data sets as a product to meet multiple needs at one time with a curation layer meant less people needed to actually curate their own information in Snowflake, which reduced our cost. And then on top of that, we actually used Snowflake to produce a ton of new operational insights around the people who were using the Snowflake environment. Like, I'll give you an example. We had a query that was produced by an actual data engineer that had like 68 joins in it. And it was one of our most expensive queries. I owned the envelope for Snowflake at the time and making sure we stayed within our envelope for what we predicted on spend. And I'm just like, I don't know who writes queries with 68 joins, but that is a very expensive query set. And what is that data used for? And how can I actually make that, more agile in a better way? Multiple jobs, break it down. So we started helping people actually engineer their data more effectively. And using the blend of big data processing and more relational processing to do that with tracking metrics for operational improvements through Snowflake, through a weekly meeting on our cost and our processes and our governance impacts, etc. So that was one of the ways that we kind of leveraged Snowflake to do that. Really, when I thought about Snowflake in the way that we intentionally used it, we intentionally try to put snowflakes in the hands of folks who needed to make that real-time decision right then with that curated set, with that right taxonomy, with the data quality monitors, etc. And it became kind of that source of truth. So again, whether it was the cost or it was the confidence in the Snowflake data itself versus where it set legacy without those controls was really the amplification or the impact.
Using the right data to make the right decisions.
Yeah. And that became our Snowflake store.
Time to get deeply personal with you, Wendy, if you don't mind. A consistent theme we've discussed on this program is the importance of a team. As you transition to new roles and new companies, how did you go about building a world-class team?
I love team building. It's one of the things I'm super passionate about. And, I think that whether it's building the team or building the community, it's all about how do you get people to work with each other, et cetera. As I mentioned, I tend to build data, whether it's the tools or the outputs or it's a community or it's the culture, I tend to build them like a product. So, I tend to really focus on hiring product managers who have end-to-end data experience, whether they were an engineer in the past or they were an analyst in the past or they were an engagement manager in the past or they did sales related to products in the past. Because I think when you are trying to create a culture, it's about creating relationships, okay? And I like people who can create relationships, who are strong communicators, who can also talk to a plan or where are we going or a roadmap or what does good look like, right? So that's one of the first areas that I really, really focus on. The other thing that when it comes to building a team, I have a distinctive style. We all have different management styles, but I tend to be a macro manager. And if you know what macro managers are, I am a very big picture person. I am a person who thinks kind of end to end, and I'm very strategic. And I like to call myself a strategic tactician. So I know kind of where I want to go, and then I can act very tactically to get there against a strategy. And I tend to hire employees or build teams that know how to collaborate, okay, talk to each other, who understand and can plug and play. So even personality playoffs, I like to play personalities off when we're relationship building with specific people who may have a political angle or a certain personality type, or not work well with, X type of person, but with this type of person. And so I like people who can deal with the ambiguity and the fluidity of the situation in an all-in-one team mentality to move towards that strategy. I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever looked at like LinkedIn, et cetera, but I've had a lot of previous employees who have very publicly posted about, my leadership style as a positive. I've had employees that have followed me from company to company because they like my leadership style, because we always move and we move together. And when we move together, we can do a lot more as a whole for the company and drive a lot more impact. And we're known for the impact. And I think that understanding how to use the folks in your team to build that culture to work together in that way, as well as then influencing that in your community to become trusted stewards, trusted, contacts to that community is only a good thing.
I want to dive in on that concept of community, Wendy, another topic that we've discussed in length already today, but we find ourselves in difficult economic times. In these transitions, how are you helping members of your team or past people to find new opportunities in this difficult environment?
Thank you so much for asking that question, because I think all of us in tech especially, or if you're looking at your LinkedIn posts, regardless if you're in tech is having a lot of, morphs and reactions to the economy right now, and is doing a lot of layoffs. And so what I've done in particular is that I started basically a Slack channel for those that were recently impacted. There was a 10% layoff impact at Salesforce. And, I think that when you start thinking about how you can crowdsource a sense of community, how you can crowdsource emotional support, how you can even crowdsource things like job posts or career fairs and open houses to a very broad audience at one time through some of the technology that exists, you start to give people a sense of normalcy, meaning they're used to working through these tools on their day-to-day. Now, all of a sudden, overnight, they don't have a job and things have changed. They're feeling a self-esteem hit personally. You have to go to channels like LinkedIn or Monster, and you look up jobs one by one, and then you reach out to the recruiters. There isn't a way that we can actually, do that intake of the types of jobs as well as drive recruiters to meet with hundreds of people at a time instead of one person at a time. So that's what I've really done. And it's been really popular since I think will be 2 weeks or 10 business days since that layoff hit. That's coming Wednesday, tomorrow. And we already have over 3,000 people in this community. Not just Salesforce people. Now we've got people from AWS or Coinbase or Informatica had layoffs. And so it's something that it's not company specific. And you now have some support, right, for you. And you have people who are actively coming to you about job engagements versus putting all the onus on you to go find your job. So if I think about this as a data leader, right, I've got so many emails. I got an email the other day from a woman whose husband got laid off, and it was his wife who wanted to personally thank me for creating this community, and it's been so good for them and so supportive and all these different things. And when I think about it as a data person, I'm doing what data people do, right? I'm giving, as a CDO, my job is to create communities so that you can get the information that you need to make you as effective as possible, whether it's getting a new job or who's hiring, or here's these training capabilities, or even crowdsourcing people to help you look at a resume to make it more effective. I'm doing what I would do in my normal day-to-day job to help people make decisions. And in this situation, I'm doing it from a layoff perspective. So, it's a great source for those who might want to use it. If you want to use it, feel free to contact me directly through LinkedIn Messenger, and I'm happy to send you an invite. If you're recruiting and hiring like Snowflake, come on, I need your recruiters in here so you can tap that talent immediately, because that will make you actually be able to hire faster, which then gets the value of that hire into your company and getting them working and, focused on whatever strategy enablement that they need to do for your company. But it's been incredible during a sad time. Something like a layoff is not a good experience, but when you're there with others who are impacted and you don't feel alone, that's a positive.
I couldn't agree more, Wendy, and very much, adding that authenticity, a topic that we've discussed in length today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Data Cloud Now. I hope to see you in person in the not too distant future. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the ability to speak and reach out to your community. And I'm going to tie you to that next time we'll be in person.
Sounds good. Take care, Wendy.
Thank you so much.